This is Roborace, and this is our race car. Roborace is like Mario Kart, but with a little twist. A real race car races on a real track somewhere in the world, but it has to avoid virtual obstacles and collect virtual rewards in a mixed reality environment. Oh yeah, also, the race car has to drive itself. In the past few months, I've joined MIT Driverless. It's a student-led club that participates in autonomous vehicle racing. In other words, we build AI for super cool race cars and we try to beat other teams. No big deal. I work on the path planning team. Path planning is planning the trajectory of the car. Essentially, we're kind of the big brain of the car, and we tell everyone else, this is where we're going. So in path planning, we currently have two really big challenges that we face. The first one is, how do we plan a global racing line given a track and a car? In other words, what's the fastest way that we can get around this track? This is a hard question because given a curve, well, we have a couple of different options on how to get around that curve, right? You can either take the path of least distance and just curve around that inner part of the track, but then you would have to take a tighter curve. And taking a tighter curve means that you have to decrease your speed and you can't go as fast. You can also try to take the biggest possible curve and try to clip that inner part of the track. And you would have to probably go a little bit further in terms of distance, but your speed can be a lot higher going through that curve. There are other cases where maybe there's a really, really long path that's straight after this curve. Then you might want to hit that curve early so that you can really accelerate down that path. So basically, there are a lot of questions and we need to figure out what's the best path to take. And so the second question is, how do we deal with the metaverse? How do we avoid obstacles? How do we collect rewards? Are we going to make the choice to slow down and curve through all of them to avoid all the obstacles and get all the collectibles? Or are we going to just try to plow through and get through as fast as we can? And keep in mind, these are virtual, so they don't actually hurt the car. But are we just going to go straight through it and take whatever time deduction that these obstacles will give us? What's the trade-off, right? So this is also a hard question. What is the best way around all these obstacles? What's the best way to collect all of these rewards? And so with these questions in mind, we embarked on our journey to try to solve them. In our last week leading up to Roborace Event 1.1, we were able to develop what we consider as the optimal algorithm. And we named this Spline Racer. The price? A small amount of sleep from multiple team members. It's midnight and we're still up on a Saturday night, actually Sunday morning. And we're going through code that's trying to take a wavy path like this and smooth it out so that we can go even faster. It's 4 a.m. Just finished writing some code and now I'm gonna go to sleep. So here's the gist of Spline Racer. Let's say that we have some section of the track. And we have obstacles like this. We also know that we have rewards somewhere on this track like this. And we know where the car currently is, so here's our start, and we want to end up on our global racing line. So here is our end. And so essentially when we have this start and this end, we can compute a bunch of different paths to get from start to end. So for example, we can go through all the rewards like this, or we can just take the most straight line like this. We can go through one of the rewards. You get the idea. And so we just generate these paths that have and don't have obstacles and rewards. I can't tell you guys how these paths are generated because that's our secret formula. But now that we have these paths, how do we calculate which one is actually the best one to take? And this is where a cost function comes in. Essentially, a cost function is telling you how much does it cost to take that certain path. And of course, what we're going to want to do in the end is take the path that is the minimum cost. So we evaluate the cost of each of these paths. Now we know that obstacles are bad and rewards are good. So what we can do is we can add cost and deduct cost for every single obstacle or reward that we go through. So here, all of these obstacles might be something like +1, and all of these rewards might be something like -1. And you can think of this reward as like a coupon. It's a discount for your cost, right? So for example, let's take a look at this blue path. We hit a reward, and then another one, and then another one. So that's -1 plus -1 plus -1. And then we want to add the cost of the curve, which is something that we can calculate using some fancy functions and the curvature of the curve that we generate. And so you can imagine, like, for example, when you're driving a car, when you have to take a tighter curve, you have to go slower. And that's how we're going to evaluate the cost. So something that's very curvy would have a higher cost than something that's just a straight line. So suppose that we do all our calculations and we get that the cost of this curve is 110, right? So then the total cost, when we factor in the -3 points from our rewards, we get a cost of 107 for the blue path. And now let's take a look at the pink path. So the pink path goes through one reward, but then it crashes into the obstacle and then goes through the last reward. However, this path is substantially flatter than the blue curve. So we might estimate the cost of this curve with our fancy functions to be 80. And this would give us a total of 79 for the pink curve's cost. And we can do this for all of them. And at the end, we see that 79 is the lowest cost for any of the paths. And so this is the path that we will choose to take from the start to the end. And so from these two steps, basically getting all these curves and then calculating the costs for all of them, we can figure out what is the optimal way to get from point A to point B for every single part of the track. So after a long night and all hands on deck, we finally had a working implementation to test on the race car. Woo! And then bam! This is when we suddenly run into deployment issues on the car, which were totally out of our control. Basically, we couldn't get our code to interface with the car's code. And so we missed our chance. We couldn't get the car out of the garage during our test slot, and it was sad. So this was very disappointing because we had put in so much work. But the reality is this is also just software engineering. In software engineering, implementation, basically writing the code and getting it to work, is actually just one of the first steps. In fact, from there, it's testing, and more testing to make sure it works in all different situations, not just the ones that you think are likely. And so even if your code works 99% of the time, that 1% might be bad enough to crash a car and total it. We never want that. Like, for example, would you trust Tesla's autopilot if it had only been proven to work in a simulation on a sunny day? If you said no, then you are thinking like a software engineer because you want this to work on the actual car, in the sun, in the rain, in the snow, in sleet, hail, etc., right? And so we were unable to test our code on the actual car. And it doesn't matter how many times it worked in simulation. If we couldn't get any testing done on the actual car, it's just not software engineering smart to deploy that code and just send it out and expect it to work. And so at this point, we were faced with a really tough decision that actually had a very straightforward answer. We would not be racing Spline Racer for Event 1.1. So instead, we used our MVP, our minimum viable product. And this was just some code in our repertoire that was essentially guaranteed to work so that we could at least get a finish in the race. But even then, the code that we knew would guarantee us a finish in the race did not guarantee us finish in the race. What happened during race 1 was that our car actually faced a localization GPS error, where the GPS just cut out for a little bit. And that was just something that we literally couldn't do anything about. And this caused our car to veer off the track into the grass only after one lap, which was slightly disappointing. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that software engineering is not sunshine and rainbows when your code works. Actually, it's kind of just more of holding your breath and praying that something works until it doesn't, and then you panic and try to fix it. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but the second race went a lot better for us, and we ended up with a 4th place finish. Here's what our race 2 looked like.
And off it goes now. So the 5th team of the day to take to the Thruxton circuit is MIT Driverless, the first of our 2 American teams. And look at that acceleration time, straight up to 100 kilometers an hour, well before they get to the first corner. Now, they're running out wider there through the first turn. That is the traditional wet racing line. If it's wet on the circuit, the normal racing line, the sort of wide in, tight at the centre and wide out approach, doesn't really work. That tends to be quite slippery. So maybe this line they're going for is a more traditional wet line. They're certainly carrying good speed into the complex there. They avoided the first of the obstacles, but we know they're likely to catch some more. Yes, there we go. They've hit a couple, 4 to be precise, on the apex of the left-hander Cobb, and then through Seagrave again. So out they go onto the far part of the circuit again, getting up to that 100 kilometers an hour as quickly as they possibly can, and then sitting at 100 kilometers an hour right the way through Noble. This left-hander, watch hopefully on board here, you can see the bumps as they, look at the wheel weaving away. Each one of those inputs being made by the wheel is coming from the AI driver, reacting to the bumpy nature of that part of the course. You can see the amount of correction and input that was required just to keep the thing on the track. And again here now, as it comes out through through Goodwood, past the Marshal's post and on its way towards Church Corner. Now, obstacles then. So that's a different line through there. See, it's taken a tighter line through that part of the track than the other team. So it went straight through that wall, which on the first lap at least, I think the other teams have all managed to miss. So that will obviously have an effect on their time. But look at the way they're keeping the average speed up. They've been sat at 100 kilometers an hour pretty much since they came out of the complex. So the fastest first lap that we've had so far was a 2:21 by Team Acronis SIT Racing Autonomous a little bit earlier on this morning. We're already up to 2 minutes though, so I think despite this all-attack style that MIT Driverless have gone for, they're not quite on that kind of speed, are they? Getting a few of the collectibles there though. This is a good opportunity to do so because, as we said earlier on, they're right on the racing line. How much speed do they carry through the chicane? Good speed in, but then not a great line through the middle. A little bit clumsy maybe. They're already over 2 minutes 20, but they could still go quicker than Gratz and Pisa here. They were a 2:27 and a 2:28 respectively on their first lap. And as they cross the line, it is a 2:28. So they're bang on the pace of Gratz and Pisa. But are they maybe hitting a few more obstacles? They're up to 6 obstacles already. And the 2 teams I just mentioned both got 20 by the end of their third lap. So right now, things aren't looking too bad, but we know that they're probably going to catch one of them here as they hit the brakes into the complex. Yep, there it goes. But then there's a collectible straight after, so that kind of cancels out any of the effect that the obstacle going into the corner had. And then cleanly through the sequence of corners after, hopefully. Now, how quickly can they get up to that 100 kilometers an hour? They were down to about 66 at the apex there, and bang, straight up. It's 110 now, of course, isn't it, on the second lap? So they are really accelerating nicely out of the corners, getting up to that maximum speed in the shortest possible time, and then heading back towards the fast part of the track. A little bit of a lift there, did you see? They slowed down that time into Noble just to settle the car. And look at the way it's weaving from side to side. Definitely not taking such a smooth line as we've seen from the other teams, searching for the grip, searching for the slightly better part of the circuit to be on so you can carry that speed through the corner. Now, another couple of obstacles in the way there. We're up to 8 obstacles now, 11 collectibles. Remember the obstacle count for Gratz and Pisa, who realistically are the 2 teams that MIT are racing here. 15 obstacles for Gratz, 16 for Pisa. So we're halfway there, but we're more than halfway through the run. So actually, this is shaping up pretty nicely for MIT Driverless. A bit of local wildlife gets out of the way, sensibly so, because when you see this thing barreling towards you at over 100 kilometers an hour, you don't want to get in its way. Past the flower bed, very pretty Thruxton circuit at this time of year, and up towards the final chicane again. Now, there is the latest offering from the metaverse, and can they avoid that wall? That could be really important. If they can avoid the obstacle, They have looked. That was really good. They got a few collectibles, but no more obstacles on the run to the chicane. This second lap looks as though it's going to be similar, maybe a bit quicker than their first one. The second laps from Graz and Pisa were around the 2:15 bracket, and as MIT Driverless come across the line, tap the stopwatch, 2:15. So again, right on the same pace as Team Pisa and Autonomous Racing Graz. It's going to keep us guessing this, isn't it? Right down to the end. I think that this will be decided by the metaverse rather than by the overall speed of the teams, because they're all pretty much on a par when it comes to their clear time. It's all going to be down to how many bonus collectibles they can get. That's what's been the difference, really, between Graz and Pisa. That one extra obstacle that Pisa hit cost them third place because they were only 3.5 tenths of a second behind Graz at the end, and that extra obstacle cost them 2 whole seconds. With a couple of obstacles in the way there for MIT. We're at 16 collectibles now, though, so that is only 4 fewer than Graz and Pisa, so we're on the way towards the sort of score that they need. Down to, well, they didn't lift as much there into Noble, did they? The speed's over 110 kilometres an hour at the apex, and they were well under 100 last time around. This looks pretty good from MIT Driverless, as they're now allowed to unleash even more of the power of the Deadbot 2.0, up to 120 kilometres an hour again, hopefully, along this run towards Church Corner. Yep, there it is. Now, can they miss the obstacles? They pull the inside. They've missed those 2. There's another one here that they might get. Yes, they did. But that's up to 14, 1 fewer than Graz, 2 fewer than Pisa, but still 4 fewer collectibles than both of those teams. They could do with getting another few here on the way through the final chicane. Accelerating uphill then for the final time. This is it. This is when we will possibly find out if we have a new top 3 runner, because Autonomous Racing Graz have held that third place for a little while now behind Arrival Racing and SIT. What can MIT Driverless do? Right, there's another collectible. 18 we're up to now, up to 20. Can we get another one before the end? I don't think we will. They're going to end on the same number of collectibles, but 1 fewer obstacle than we saw for Graz and 2 fewer than Pisa. And we know the speed has been pretty good as well. The clear time to beat for Graz is a 7-minute 2.05. And as it breaks the timing beam now, it's a 6:55.447. And with fewer obstacles hit there, I think that might be enough to put them into third position outright, ahead of Graz and Pisa. We'll wait for smarter people than me to make the official calculations, but that certainly looks good. Their clear time is faster than the 2 teams they were racing. They hit the same number of collectibles and 1 fewer obstacle. That should, I think, put them in third place.
And so on behalf of MIT Driverless, we are confident that we'll get them next time with Spline Racer. We are competitive and we are going for the title. So stay tuned. So one of my goals during quarantine was to kind of just get my act together and be more of an adult. And I think that one of the things that goes along with that is kind of finding your signature perfume scent. You know how some people say, look good, feel good? Well, now I also believe smell good, look good, feel good. Bon Parfumer is a French perfume brand, and they were nice enough to send me this perfume. It's number 402, vanilla, caramel, and sandalwood. And yeah, I'm very into like sweet scents. Like my candles are all like pumpkin spice and maple sugar cookie and almond macaroon, etc. So I thought this one would fit me really well. And first of all, the packaging is really cute. It comes in this like white box. This is what the perfume looks like. Now let's smell it. So first of all, it fits into the palm of your hand. It's very, I don't know, it just looks nicer than any of those like body sprays and mists that I have from other places. So I'm really excited to try this. Let's put some on. It just smells like alcohol right now before it dries. I'm getting a lot of vanilla. I don't know how much like sandalwood I'm getting, but it definitely smells sweet. And it's kind of like a smoky sweet almost. It's like, It's like I would call it like, it's what your kitchen smells like after you make creme brulee. And personally, I love eating creme brulee. I love looking at creme brulee. I love ordering creme brulee, making creme brulee. So I think that it makes sense that I love smelling like creme brulee. I'm a huge fan of this scent. It's very sweet, but it's also a little bit like smoky sweet. I would wear this, honestly, on a daily basis. I think it's a very different smell of a perfume that's not necessarily like sweet pea, blossom, rose, whatever other perfumes are made out of. Yeah, I'm a huge fan. I will say I almost want this to smell a little bit spicier, almost. Like, I almost wish that there were a hint of cinnamon or something that just made it smell a little bit more like a scented candle. Just because I am also currently a little bit obsessed with all my candles. And I don't usually wear perfume, but I think with this, I might start wearing it every day. And so that's Bon Parfumeur.